What's up, all my wonderful readers? Thank you so much for coming back over to hang out with me. Welcome to your favorite place on the internet, in-depth literature. I hope you guys are doing well, having a great start to 2024. It feels crazy even saying that, but it's been a minute. We do have a book update for y'all, and it's going to go as follows. Got this epic stack of books here. Now, we're still reading the Old Testament. We're getting through the book of Judges, and we're also reading the complete poetry of Alfred Lord Tennyson, and I actually have a project. I'm going to read some of Alfred Lord Tennyson's beautiful poetry on camera for you all, maybe in the next video or sometime in the next couple of weeks. But this is what we're working with now. So let's just kind of get straight into the list. We talked about some of these on the live stream. We've talked about some of these in my book reviews. Well, actually, we haven't done any reviews on this, but we've definitely talked about, like the Thomas Wolfe, for example, talked a little bit about Tweak and Monte Cristo. But let's get into the first one that we just started 2 days ago. We're reading As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. I've got this really old vintage copy. It's real easy to take to work and take all over the place wherever I go out. And I had no idea what to expect going into Faulkner, but this novel is fascinating. It's awesome. And it's just not what I was expecting with William Faulkner. Again, we're talking about Gothic, Southern Gothic literature. I think William Faulkner is a great place to start. And we do have a little bit of the Southern Gothic literature under our belt. People like Edgar Allan Poe as well as Thomas Wolfe. He's not so much Gothic, but he is very Southern. This is going to make for a great analysis. This is not an easy read. It's easy to read. It flows fairly quickly. The plot is not too complicated, but it's so esoteric, my friends. Very esoteric. And on top of that, what William Faulkner is doing with language here is just absolutely brilliant. It almost reminds me of Anthony Burgess and Clockwork Orange, just the way that he's able to sort of create a new language, a definitive Southern language in Faulkner's case. So we will definitely be getting more in detail with As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. Up next, we are at the tail end of Monte Cristo. I'll show you where we're at. We got about, I don't know, maybe 100 pages, not even. So we have conquered all of this huge chunk right here. We're on page 1,175. I don't know how to say that in proper terms. So, and we have the novel actually ends on page 1243. So we're on page 1175 or 1175, if that makes sense. This is going to make for a great analysis. I might do a video version as well as a longer in-depth live stream version. I think that would be the best. You guys can see how I'm definitely reading it. Not only because of all the sticky notes, but because of that real nice creasing on the side. I really like how the Penguin Classics look after you've read them. This is definitely taken a beating. I haven't bent the spine or anything. That's a no-no. I did do that with War and Peace because I just wanted to throw War and Peace across the room. Not because it wasn't good, but because it was so long. I'm just like, I'm going to bend this motherfoe's spine, you know what I mean? But we did not do that with Monte Cristo. I don't even know where to get started with Monte Cristo. Edmond Dantes, oh man, Danglers, Mercedes, Andrea Calvasanti. Just a whole cast of amazing characters. And after we finish this, probably before we do the analysis, we are going to watch the Jim Caviezel version of Monte Cristo. I know there's a lot of other great versions out there, but this is quite esoteric in itself. It is not just a adventure story or a revenge story. It is an esoteric revenge adventure / historical narrative, but it's also just a great story with probably way too many characters, but they're all really interesting. They're awesome. We have Freemasonry in Monte Cristo. We have some Skittles stuff, and we have, government and legal and financial corruption. We have revenge. We have religion. We have, mythology. We have allegory. So there is so much to unpack with Alexandre Dumas and the Count of Monte Cristo. So I hope you guys will stick around for that analysis when the time comes. It's not going to be long, but I'm not going to rush through the end of it. So maybe in the next month, I do plan on getting more into depth with our friend Alexandre Dumas here. Up next, we have the Iliad by Homer. And I actually first started reading the Odyssey until I found out you're supposed to read the Iliad first. So we'll get back to the Odyssey at some point. And I actually forgot about our friend Harold Bloom here. We did read a little bit of Harold Bloom. So just really great, epic, masculine Greek mythology here, dealing with not only warfare between the mortals, but also the tension between mortals and the immortal gods, sort of the spiritual, religious dynamic that exists in Greek mythology, rather. Whole cast of really heroic characters. We've got a lot of female deities that pop up in here, as well as male deities. And at the top of the food chain, so to speak, is Zeus himself. So I cannot wait to get further into the Iliad. Now, some of it is a little over my head, right? I don't have a real strong base in classical literature or classical training. I've read a lot of classics, but I'm not a master of the ancient world in terms of literature. But we do have a lot of really great stuff to unpack with Homer. So hopefully we'll be getting to the Odyssey too. I'm probably going to continue with the Odyssey right after we finish the Iliad. We're on page, let's see here. We're on book 10, page 230. This is the Robert Fitzgerald translation. It's not the most recent. It's probably not the best, but it's definitely getting the job done. It's very beautiful and very epic. But like I said, we do have, with the Odyssey, for example, we have a more modern translation, which I think is useful. This one's translated by Stephen Mitchell. So maybe eventually we'll compare different translations. Yeah, that would be really cool to do. So we'll put the Odyssey back up here. Not going to talk anymore about Homer for now, but just know that that's coming next. So let's talk a little bit about How to Read and Why by Harold Bloom. Very fascinating book. I think the only downside for me is that I hadn't read a lot of this material that he was covering in here. And I do think that Harold Bloom is a little bit too academic. Now, he's not like woke or anything like that. You know, he definitely encourages you not to approach classic literature with sort of a political social justice narrative, which I thought was really interesting, and I definitely support that. Having said that, he's a little lost in his world of academic trivialities, you know, and I sort of found myself saying, what is Harold Bloom even trying to say here? It's all his opinion. It doesn't necessarily make it right, the fact that he says, you know, whatever. And some of it was just, I don't know, not really that interesting. I was expecting Harold Bloom to be a little bit more interesting, and I found myself just kind of bored. I know he's got another book documenting the Western canon, so we might check out that book too. If you have a better recommendation as far as Harold Bloom is concerned, I think he's important to have under your belt, at least be familiar with some of his ideas if you're going to do lit analysis like we're attempting to do on this channel. But again, I was a little disappointed. I think he's a little bit of an egg-headed professor. He's probably been teaching in the humanities too long, and he needs to do some of his own writing. Well, you know, he does a lot of writing, but I'd like to see Harold Bloom write a novel or something. That would be cool. So up next, we have Tweak by Nick Sheff. This was recommended to me by Marissa. Shout out to Marissa over at Sunset City. Make sure you guys give her a subscription. Check out her videos. Share her videos. She does a lot of cool spiritual videos, and she also has been kind of getting into the drama with Vegan Cheetah, aka Charles Marlowe. So Tweak, yeah, this is the first memoir that I've read in a while. We're almost done with this. We're on page 309. We've got about another 20 pages to go, so we'll definitely be knocking this out within the next couple of days. So I plan on doing a whole live stream of Tweak, possibly a short video, because I do think it is important to discuss this. Now, we're not going to be able to approach this with the same sort of, you know, esoteric, in-depth analysis that we would with classic literature, but I think there's definitely some things that Nick Sheff is doing quite well as a writer in this. It's almost in the vein of Charles Bukowski, but it's a little, I don't know, his his subject matter and his themes are a little bit elevated. It's a little better than Charles Bukowski. But the writing itself is very similar, and some of the themes are very similar to Charles Bukowski: sex, drugs, addiction. But there's some light, and there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And not only that, but there's a little bit of intellect that we don't necessarily get with Charles Bukowski. So we are going to be reviewing that. And you guys know that we're always reading Thomas Wolfe, and right now we're currently getting through the complete short stories of Thomas Wolfe. Now, I sort of just read this as scripture a couple times a week at the end of the night. Sometimes I'll put it down for a week or two, but we're always getting through these stories. And I do want to plan a video where we start reading maybe excerpts, or maybe do a live stream reading some of the entire stories. He's got some beautiful stories in here. I don't even know where to begin. But as you can see, we're always very impressed. He's got this one story here called Gulliver, the Story of a Tall Man, which basically, if you're familiar with Thomas Wolfe, you know that he was like, 6'2" or something, very tall individual. And he talks about the loneliness and the isolation that tall men feel walking in this world. And he's got this beautiful story called Faces of the War, which documents not only racism, but political tensions and just stuff that happened after Reconstruction. Just beautiful stuff. Southern, classic Southern literature, in my opinion. I know Thomas Wolfe is not the most popular guy out there right now, but he's popular with me. And like I said, we're still reading the complete poems of Alfred Lord Tennyson, as well as the Old Testament. So once we get through the Bible, we'll have some more stuff knocked under our belt. We'll have a little bit more of a reference point. And I'm really getting into the poems of Alfred Lord Tennyson. Again, I don't read the Bible or Tennyson or poetry in general on a regular basis. For me, it's more novels and short stories, because I think those are the most important. But I think poetry definitely serves its purpose, although it's a little bit stuffy, it's a little bit too flowery, and sometimes just too darn esoteric, and sometimes just downright pretentious. But if you guys have some poets or poems that you might recommend to me, please let me know in the comment section. I thank you all for watching, and I'll speak with you again soon.